Democrats were the big winners in U.S. elections on Tuesday. New York City voters elected a new mayor after a contest that drew international attention. 34-year-old Zohran Mamdani, a self-described democratic socialist, defeated a former state governor. Democrats also defeated Republicans in 2 governors' races in New Jersey and Virginia. We begin with this report from CGTN's Owen Fairclough.
Donald Trump was elected U.S. president a second time 1 year ago. But this anniversary has been spoiled by a Democrat rout.
I don't think it was good for Republicans. I don't think it was good. I'm not sure it was good for anybody.
Trump on Wednesday digesting the implications of a Democrat wave from coast to coast in races for governors, state Supreme Courts, and a host of ballots on specific issues.
New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant.
But the moment arguably belongs to New York's next mayor, Zohran Mamdani, who energized voters as a Muslim Democrat socialist, meeting Trump and his agenda head on.
If anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him.
Democrats are pointing toward double-digit swings that helped them take Virginia's governorship from Republicans.
Virginia chose pragmatism over partisanship.
Abigail Spanberger also making history as the state's first female governor. But if there's hope among Democrats after their disaster in last year's presidential and congressional elections, others are urging caution. Many of these victories were in deep blue states such as California and New Jersey, also electing its first Democratic woman governor. And incumbent presidents typically don't fare well in off-year elections.
If you read the pollsters, the shutdown was a big factor, negative for the Republicans. And that was a big factor. And they say that I wasn't on the ballot was the biggest factor.
And Trump's contention that this election was not a referendum on him is supported by an Associated Press voter poll. But Mandani's populist pledge to lower the cost of living resonated with voters who, like millions across the country, are facing resurgent inflation in an underwhelming economy at odds with the pledges made by Trump a year ago.
Make buses fast and free. And deliver universal child care across our city.
Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
To discuss all of this, joining me now is Brice. He is a conservative columnist and secretary of the Delaware Republican Party. Also with me here in the studio is Imani. She is cultural curator and professor of digital storytelling at George Washington University. Joining the discussion from Miami is political analyst Jadan Horyn, and with us too is Douglas Sloan. He is a principal at the National Capital Strategy Group. Welcome to all of you. Brandon, let me start with you. A big night for the Democrats across the country, well, at least in those states where elections were held. But the big focus, of course, was in New York, in the mayor's race there. The man who describes himself as a democratic socialist, Zohran Mamdani, won big. In that race, he campaigned on economic issues, affordability and the cost of living. What are your thoughts on that? How did he do it?
Well, first of all, it was a sad day, in my opinion, for this country when we elect a socialist, a self-proclaimed socialist, and put them over control of the third largest economy in the world, that being New York City. You know, it's interesting. I said on this program a while back when I said that I always thought that immigration was going to be a major factor in the president's challenge. And now, following this government shutdown, following ICE, I think this was less about Mamdani. I mean, the guy's 34 years old and clearly needs to take a lesson out of an economics course, but it was a retaliation against this president. And I think if I'm sitting talking to the president, I'm concerned because I think what's going to happen now, when you look at places like New Jersey, which, you know, Jack Ciattarelli was actually favored in many cases to be the successor and to win. When you look in Virginia, where the lady could barely, Spanberger could barely answer a question, let alone would she condemn a guy who asked for someone's murder, got reelected. That tells you that this election, Nadan, was more about being anti-Trump and responding to the president and this push of the government shutdown, as opposed to, were these strong candidates? Absolutely not. And unfortunately, and I'll say it on your show, this was a sad day in this nation when we talk about candidates that are going to move this country forward. Not at all. And again, there's nothing good that can come from a self-proclaimed socialist named Zohran.
Douglas, what are your thoughts on what Brandon just told us, that this was essentially an election about Trump, not about the issues that all these candidates talked about?
Well, to a good extent, I'd say he was correct in that Trump definitely drove the turnout in this election. But also, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that it was also Trump policies that drove the turnout in this election. The fact that we're in the middle of a government shutdown, the fact that he has enacted all of these tariffs that have hurt small businesses, the fact that the economy is teetering on a recession, all of that is Trump policies. All of that is due to Trump policies. So, and obviously you can get into the minutia of the shutdown a little bit more, and I'm sure we will as the show moves forward. But this was absolutely a referendum on Trump. I don't know how the Republicans can recover from this, because I don't see Trump changing. And, Democrats were able to kind of frame this election about affordability and is your life better and how do you feel about the direction of the country, and all of that comes out spades for the Democrats. So I don't see how the Republicans are able to pivot unless Trump changes. Brice brought up a good point that a lot of the candidates that were running in the Republican Party were not good candidates. I agree with that. Those are MAGA candidates. Those are Trump candidates. That's par for the course for who runs in these positions. And they're not going to be as strong as middle of the road, more conventional candidates that normally run in the Republican Party. So I agree with them to an extent that, and it was a great day for Democrats. And let me tell you, the midterms are not looking good for the Republican Party. If this holds, everything is on the table.
Jadan Horyn, Mamdani describes himself, as I said, as a democratic socialist, but he did connect very strongly with people across the city of New York. And this also represented, to some extent, a rejection of some of the more well-known names in that city's politics. He ran a formidable campaign. When we look at the results at the end of the day, what was the message that voters sent to the establishment?
The voters said to the establishment was that you're not hearing us. We don't care about your desire for power. What we care about are having policies that actually impact and make our lives better. Zohran, he connected with something that's important for millennials and Gen Z and Gen Alpha, which is affordability, the ability to seize the opportunity in this country. He just happens to see that future in a very sinister way. He views government as the solution to everything, and that he was able to sell that with a smile. And kudos to him. He is a uniquely talented orator, much like AOC was in the very beginning of her congressional run, much like Barack Obama was and still is. And he can connect with people, and that says something. But to transpose that beyond New York City is much harder, because the other candidates that won across the country for Democrats were actually very moderate. So, I think for Democrats, yes, absolutely, categorically a good night.
Yeah.
But really, philosophically, ideologically, where are they going after this? They won, yes, but they have a socialist and they have moderates.
All right, Jadan, I just want to stay with New York for a moment here. You say it's sinister. What is sinister about a candidate who wants to reduce inequality, who wants to make a city more affordable, who wants to look at cost of living issues? What's wrong with that?
Yeah, viewing someone else's wealth as belonging to other people is sinister. I very much understand. I used to be a part of ANCAP circles and sat with communists in Bushwick and socialists in Williamsburg, and I understand the ideology. And to believe that the wealth that people work hard for and to create is not theirs, and in fact is someone else's, and to use the coercive power of the state in order to redistribute it to other people, that's sinister. So I think in this case, when we look at what he stands for versus how he sells it, he is a cheery guy. He's talking about affordability. He's on message, but how he applies that, how it happens, how he, quote, makes billionaires not exist in the city of New York. I think that's the real question. And will he be able to deliver promises to all the people that he promised?
Imani, let me get your view on this. Mamdani, he built a very diverse campaign. He is a Muslim in a city with a very large Jewish population, and the opposition against him tried to push that division in their campaign against him, but he did manage to win. And he did manage to win without the support of the leaders in the Democrat Party. What did you make of it?
Well, when you look at someone like a Zohran Mamdani, as the other panelists this evening have mentioned, I think it's important to realize that the issues that he brought place, and yes, the policies, but the issues that he brought place do impact a diverse group of people. And so I don't believe that necessarily cost of living or cost of childcare or transportation is only for a certain demographic of people. Everyone in New York City can acknowledge that the rent is too high, right? We had a candidate years ago that stated that. And I think what Zohran did so well over the case of inequality and over the course of his campaign was to reach out to communities that did not look like him, that weren't of the same faith or the same ethnicity of him. And he was able to connect. And I think it's really important when we look at moving forward as a nation, that the division that we were so focused on is not where we want to go. I think it was a great day yesterday, not for Democrats, but I think for our nation to say that when we are unhappy with the status quo, when we believe that the establishment, that we can go to the polls and we can make our voices heard. And that's what a number of individuals did yesterday. I'm from Maryland, so I didn't vote yesterday. But I appreciate what the New Yorkers did. The
challenge is, Imani, as Jadan pointed out, is can that message resonate outside of places like New York? I think it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult when you have these deeply blue areas. I mean, I think most of us on this show right now know that what Virginia does, what California does, what New York does, what New Jersey does is not going to win in a general election. It's not a quote unquote blue wave that everyone was possibly mentioning. So I don't believe that the politics of Zohran Mamdani would work in a place like Memphis. Okay. But I think it's important to talk about affordability and cost of living. Right, but very quickly, if you could tell us, to what extent did the outcome of this election represent a generational change? Oh, massively. I remembered 17 years ago, that's where I age myself, on November 4th, 2008, when, we stood and saw Barack Obama become president. And that moment, which was such a watershed moment, it was massive. And when I think of where we are now, we are looking for younger candidates. The establishment guard is not there anymore. And that's going to be really important moving into midterms as well as 2028. Okay, Douglas Sloan, very quickly, if you could tell us, in the wake of this election and on the platforms that Zohran Mamdani fought, do you think there is a need now for Democrats to recalibrate their message to other parts of the country? As I pointed out as well, that he didn't get the support, the ringing support of Democrat leaders.
Well, I think that we need to honor the democratic process in New York and understand that Zohran Mamdani got elected in New York City, but he wouldn't necessarily get elected in Peoria, Illinois, or maybe not even in parts of California or any other number of blue states, the major cities of blue states. His message worked well for his audience. Right. And that's great. And I honestly wish him the best of luck. I hope that he can actually bring about the change he was talking about. Okay. But I think that
Let me
I
get.
think that most Democrats are moderate, and that you saw with the other victories in New Jersey, in Virginia, some of the other propositions that are going on, and just with
Right.
Democrats in general, that this is a party that's shifting back to the center, and that maybe New York is just an outlier, but that's not necessarily going to set the tone nationwide.
All right, Brandon, let me talk about some of the other races. Democrats also won big in the state of Virginia as well as in the state of New Jersey. Polls show that voters were concerned with pocketbook issues, with the economy. But here we have a president. I mean, you pointed out earlier on that this election was about Donald Trump, but here we have a president who's focused on tariffs, which has pushed up prices for consumers across the country. Add to that, we've got stubborn inflation, we've got a labor market that's under pressure right now. Have the Republicans got it wrong?
You know, Nan, I'll push back a little bit. I actually think when it came to specifically the Virginia race, Spamberger, who, I mean, I watched the debate. She wasn't really an exciting candidate at all, and she refused to actually answer tough questions. However, the government shutdown, being that it's impacted many people in the DMV, unfortunately, I think she got lucky because a lot of those people, A, were impacted by that shutdown if you live in the DMV area, specifically around Arlington and Fairfax area, and B, you know, she also had the benefit that who's in charge. And I said this again on your show last time I was on, where I said it doesn't matter who's holding or who's responsible for the shutdown. The person in charge is always the person that's going to be accused of being the culprit. And so now, unfortunately, that happened to be Donald Trump. You know, it's interesting. What I found was appalling is that Barack Obama, yes, I'm going to call him on your show, he, a year ago, told men of color that they needed to support an African-American candidate for the presidency. And now, just a month ago, he turns around and changes his entire tune. I thought that was very unfortunate. And I'll be honest with you, if it was not for and this is me personally, if it was not for the government shutdown, I think we would have seen a very different gubernatorial result.
Okay, Imani, you want to say something?
Well, I find it very interesting, Brandon, when we're talking about Virginia, Donald Trump did not endorse the Republican candidate. Any feedback there? As we mentioned, the Republican candidates that were put, I mean, see why in New York, there weren't good Republican candidates on the ballot. And that's the reason that they lost. If we could even, we don't even have to talk about the Democrats and what they ran. There were not good Republican candidates on. He did not endorse Winsome Earl Sears, and I would love your opinion on why that didn't happen.
I just told you. I think the issue was, unfortunately, and I'll be honest, I think the government shutdown not only was a big factor in this election, but I actually think that moving forward, what you're going to see now are those Republicans from key swing states are going to say, you know what, based on what we saw happen with this shutdown, either the shutdown's going to hurry up and end, or you're going to see now Republicans are going to start to pull away from this presidency. Again, neither candidates, I mean, when you look at Winsome Sears and Spamberger, it wasn't even close. But again, it just happened to be the president who was over this government shutdown and the impacts of ICE, which unfortunately gave us the result last night.
Okay, Jadan, do you think it was the shutdown that cost Republicans votes?
I mean, of course, it cost Republicans some votes, but that is based on all exit polling and what all voters said, that was not the most important issue. The most important issue is the economy and affordability, and Democrats were laser focused on their messaging. The reason that Winsome lost was because she focused on cultural issues, and Spamberger focused on economic issues. And that is what voters said last night they cared about, whether it was New York, whether it was New Jersey, whether it was Virginia, whether it was Georgia, Pennsylvania. I mean, the list goes on of places where Democrats won, or even California, which specifically was a reaction against Trump. Voters were responding to what they see in the economy, and that Democrats finally are talking about the thing that they've been wanting them to talk about for the past 2 years, that for whatever reason, Democrats were incapable of doing this last election. They found their voice and they were focused on it, and the results speak for themselves for the Democratic Party. So, you know, the blaming Donald Trump or this shutdown is such a, I hate to say it, it's an Acela corridor point of view to really look at the shutdown. I lived in D.C. I think, the three other panelists live close to D.C. or in D.C. They understand its impact there. But outside of that, like down here in Miami, no one talks about the government.
Just one other point, Jadan.
It doesn't even impact the...
Yeah. Okay, just one other point. You know, I asked Douglas earlier on whether the Democrats would have to recalibrate their message to the rest of the country. Would Republicans now have to recalibrate their message in the aftermath of this election?
Well, I think it's interesting because you're already starting to see that. Absolutely. Democrats are recalibrating back to the economy. And unfortunately, Republicans are doubling down or tripling down on these cultural issues. And, they think that's what powered them back in 2024. And they just are misreading where the electorate is. So they are recalibrating. We're starting to see that, the counter messaging coming out. And, unfortunately, all messaging in the Republican Party is basically controlled by Donald Trump. So, unfortunately, when it comes to how they're going to try to recalibrate, it's going to be led from the top. And if Donald Trump recalibrates back to talking about common sense things, like I think we saw his True Social tweet today, then there could be a pivot. If it goes back to cultural issues, we might lose even more voters from the Republican column.
Douglas Sloan, there was a response to the election from the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, who is a Republican, and he pointed out that Democrats should not read too much into these victories. Yes, it was a big win for Democrats, but these happened in states that traditionally lean Democrat. Does he have a point?
Oh, I don't think so. You can just look at the margin of victory in some of these states. I think Spanberger won by 15 points. For governor. Mikey Sherrill won by 13 points, I believe. And just the margin of victory of some of these victories was astounding. And, the Democrats are very excited because this is a window into what can happen in 2026 if they stay the course, like some of the other panelists said, focus on affordability issues. And Trump is Trump. He got here by focusing on cultural issues, being the cultural king and everything, and essentially espousing negativity. I don't see him pivoting from that. I don't see that changing. And so the Democrats have a real opportunity here in 2026 with that 2026 election map. Like I said earlier, almost everything is on the table with some of the margins of victories that we saw in yesterday's election. So, I'm just reiterating what they said, the affordability, the turnout driven by Trump, what's happening with ICE, what's happening with the TARs, what's happening with the government shutdown, all of it is coming down on Trump and the Republican Party.
Right.
And it is hurting him now, and it will hurt him next year around this time.
Brandon, if, as Jadan pointed out, that Republicans will have to pivot to economic issues, would it have to start at the top with Donald Trump? Perhaps he would have to moderate his tariff policies, which are actually costing consumers across the country more, and take the focus off, the very sharp focus that is now on some of the immigration policies and practices that we see.
I think Trump is Trump. And unfortunately, I think Trump is going to continue to be Trump because that's what the people elected him to do. The problem isn't, I think, the president. The problem is going to come down to those, as I said before, those Republican senators and those Republican House members. After watching what happened last night, they've got to make a choice as to whether they're going to stand with the president or whether they want to be reelected in the midterms.
Imani, to what extent will these elections push Democrats to be more forceful in their opposition to Donald Trump? I mean, there have been criticisms that they've not been as strong as they should be.
Not at all. I'm hoping. I've been waiting. I think many people have been waiting for energy to match energy. And so what we're seeing even right now with this government shutdown, and yes, we do live in the Beltway bubble, where I completely agree that sometimes the things that we pay attention to here in the DMV are often not the cases for what people are focusing on around the country. And Democrats have to step up. What we saw yesterday with Prop 50 in California, where Gavin Newsom said, okay, in response to what we saw Governor Abbott do in Texas, okay, okay, we go come with the fire as well. And I appreciate that energy because we haven't seen it yet. We've seen this passism. What is so frustrating for many moderate individuals like myself who are absolutely more centrist is that we're not seeing fight. We're not seeing that energy. And we're hoping that this wave, so to speak, really carries in some actual policies. The Democrats right now said that they are not coming back to the table unless healthcare subsidies are extended.
Yeah.
And so I hope that they stay the course. I also hope that our government reopens tomorrow. Like, let's come together and have this conversation. Let's work together. Let's do what the voters asked you to do, which is work together. Yeah. And we would be really important to see that. So Democrats, I want them to fight, but I want them to be strategic.
What would you like them to do? Because the fallback position for many Democrats is that, look, they control all three branches of government.
Absolutely.
They meaning the Republicans.
Well, Donald Trump said, like, get rid of the filibuster. Like, if y'all are really about it and you just want to reopen the government, you can do that. Get rid of the filibuster. Let's move forward. The reality is that, yes, you get rid of the filibuster and then stay tuned for what happens if and when you no longer control all three branches of government and that filibuster is now gone. Now what happens? And so there's that real, quote unquote, fear. But I think the reality is we need to be strategic. And I hope the Democrats take last night's victories and move it into actual policies that we can see moving forward.
Okay, Jadan, very quickly, I've only got about 40 seconds, but would both parties now have to also recognize that there is a new generation of voters that are now going to the polls?
Yeah, both parties are completely ossified. And we saw the complete rejection of the New York political machine and the fact that now both Gen Z and millennials are coming of age and deciding that the old guard needs to go. And Donald Trump's the oldest elected president. We had the previous oldest elected president.
Right.
And we're about to see our new generation of politicians.
Okay, and that is where we have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That's it for another edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington.